We've all heard it. Hobbies shape your life, but is it just a self-help prop, or is there real science behind it? Today, we will unpack the Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit and how it applies to students, businesses, and even societal change. The importance of this book is on personal growth. Duhigg talks about the science behind habits, and I believe the awareness is the first step to changing bad habits. This is important because in the business world, success hinges on the ability to grow, adapt, and maintain habits both at the personal level and within an organizational as it shaped individual performance, team dynamics, and so on. A quote that I like from this book that touches on this is change might not be fast and isn't always easy, but with time and effort, almost any habits can be reshaped. The next important factor is the power of habits in understanding consumer behaviors. As organization business student, not only do we need to understand our own habits in terms of personal and on the company scale, we also need to understand the consumer's habits and how we can utilize that to drive up our engagement and sales. A study done by Wendy Wood and David T. News shows that up to 45% of consumer behavior is based on habits instead of making a conscious decision. For instance, when we go to grocery store to get a new toothpaste, we tend to gravitate and then purchase the one that we are already using at home. Companies can then leverage this information in marketing engagement or consumer retention. Lastly, the topic of this book is important because it touches on employee well-being and organizational culture. As mentioned before, having good habits can lead to personal growth. But not only that, the company's culture and the structure are also contingent on the leader's habits, whether it is collaboration, dynamics, or even innovation. Successful companies rely on good habits to shape their company's culture. In this book, Starbucks is used as an example, whereby they train their employees to utilize automatic responses, such as debriefing, to integrate their culture of the emotional control, especially when dealing with the customers. This not only helps the employee to better manage their emotions, but it also improves Starbucks customer service, which again reinforce my point that habits can really make or break organizations. One of the main ideas in this book is the habit loop. The Duhigg introduced this framework, which contains three important things. First is cue. This can be a trigger that initiates the habits. Then comes a routine, the behavior that is performed. And lastly is the reward. Let's look at the example here and how students can use this habit loop to better themselves. On the left side is the old way where the queue is overwhelmed with assignment, which leads to the action of the doom scrolling on social media, which gives them that reward of temporary distraction from the assignment. This leads them into a vicious cycle, and the end result is them producing a subpar work for their assignments. We can then shift this by changing the action as seen on the right side to break down the task into smaller actions to get started. The lever will be the student has at least started on their assignment and thus comes a relief. By building on this habit, we are training ourselves, and at one point, we will start craving the new reward and start doing the actions. So in this instance, starting the assignment are we to give ourselves more time to complete it. This framework is actually insightful for me because it gave me a place to start, and instead of forcing myself to change actions, I could dive deeper and get to know and understand my own cue or my own cues. Instead of asking myself why I can't change, I shifted to what's the cause. So I've started reducing self-judgment, and instead of focusing, instead focus on strategizing my own habits to become better version of me. This directly brings me to my next point, which is keystone habit. Keystone habit refer to small but influential habit that can trigger a chain reaction and create a ripple effect on other behaviors. For instance, in this book, highlighted an example where a colleague's focus on the workplace safety led to increased efficiency and the profits. Why this work is because to improve safety, every worker had to communicate openly, and employees who saw leadership act on their concerns become more invested in the company's success. This restructures a quarter's culture positively, which resulted in 90% decrease in injury case, proving that good habits can create a ripple effect that eventually leads to the good profit for companies, showing that small habits can lead to bigger things. Lastly is on consumer behavior. As previously mentioned, understanding consumer behavior is important for companies. In this book, it gives Target as an example where Target analyzed customer purchase data to predict pregnancy and send targeted ads. This leads to a father discovering that his own teenage daughter was pregnant after she received baby-rated coupons. While fascinating, the book doesn't deeply critiques the ethical implications of corporations exploiting habit formation for profit, which leads to the next part, which is the critics that I have about this book. While habit drive the business growth, their unethical exploitation undermine trust and societal well-being, which I find this book is lacking. Duhigg takes a neutral stance on this result, further exploring the ethical implications of the targeted ads. Habit forming design often cross the line from persuasion to manipulation. Consumers also often don't understand how their behavior is mined and monetized by corporations. Some firms argue that they're simply giving consumers what they want. However, habits form via dark patterns. For example, Amazon's confusing unsubscribe process strip away informed consent. Some regulation should be placed to counter this, and then teach the critical thinking about habit loops. For example, Finland's media literacy programs. Next, other critics that I have is the book heavily depends on the case studies, sometimes prioritizing the narratives over scientific evidence. In The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg used Rosa Parks as a case study in social habits, arguing that societal change follows the patterns similar to individual habit formation. While the book presents an insightful take, it simplifies the event. Duhigg portrays that boycott as following the habit rope, but social movement involve legal battles, deep planning, and years of grassroots activism. One of the advice that this book can give is that keystone habits are small change that trigger widespread shift in behavior or culture. They create a chain reaction, for example, exercise and better sleep, and improve the productivity. So it's important to identify one habit that makes others easier, then automate it. Secondly, Duhigg argues that small, achievable victories create a success spiral, reinforcing motivation and making larger changes easier over time. Small wins trigger dopamine release, train the brain to associate effort with reward. Tiny goals also reduce fear of failures. Success breeds success. Start small to avoid overwhelming the habit loop. Lastly, disruption, for example, pandemics or job changing. Breaking the existing habit rule, creating a window to install new routines. This is because crisis destabilize queue, forcing adoption. So this is the perfect time to test a new routine while motivation is high, and then use small wins to lock in changes. So in conclusion, when you combine all three, start small, for example, like 2 minutes worker, and then build keystone habit, for example, exercise, and use crisis to accelerate the change. Speed up changes, for example, move. This is the reference. Thank you.